I could never have anticipated that night unfolding the way it did. It began just like any other, with no hint of how drastically my life would soon shift. Rufus, my stepson, had always been somewhat reserved. That evening, he came home with his friend Peter. I had encountered Peter only a few times before, but we had never exchanged more than brief pleasantries. He was tall, his long legs amplifying his height, in stark contrast to Rufus, whose boisterous laughter and boundless energy often filled the room. Peter, however, was quiet and introspective, moving in a deliberate manner as though his mind were preoccupied with unspoken concerns. Despite his silence, Peter had an undeniable presence that drew attention. It wasn't just his height, it was the way he observed everything with a calm, thoughtful gaze, as if he perceived things beyond their surface. Peter's demeanor stood out starkly from Rufus's other friends, who were typically loud and animated. He had an air of maturity that made him seem older than his years, as though he carried an understanding he chose not to share. When he entered the house, he offered me a polite nod, not overly friendly, but noticeably respectful. It was as though he absorbed everything around him without needing to voice questions. I couldn't help but wonder what Rufus saw in Peter that made them so close, but I refrained from asking. Peter intrigued me. There was a depth to him that suggested more than met the eye. Later, that night, after Rufus and Peter had spent their time together, I went to bed as usual, expecting an uneventful evening. I was on the verge of sleep when a faint knock on my bedroom door startled me. The sound was so soft that at first I thought I might have imagined it. Hoping the visitor would leave, I remained still. Hoping the visitor would leave, I remained still, silently hoping it would be proof of their presence. Our ghost had vanished. Hurt me a lot. The noise made me sit up slightly, and when I turned, I saw Peter standing there, illuminated by the hallway light behind him, which cast long shadows across the floor. His expression was calm, but something about his presence unsettled me. He didn't smile or speak immediately. He simply stood there, watching me. The atmosphere in the room shifted, growing colder and more tense. My heart raced as unease crept over me. Peter's gaze was steady, but there was something in his eyes I couldn't quite decipher. I didn't understand why he had come to my room so late. Was something wrong? Did he need help? My thoughts swirled with questions as I sat up, waiting for him to speak. "Is everything okay?" I asked softly, my voice trembling slightly. I wasn't expecting anyone, let alone Peter. He remained silent for a moment before stepping into the room and finally saying, "I couldn't sleep." His voice calm, yet mismatched with the tension in the air. "I thought maybe you couldn't either." Peter's unwavering stare felt invasive, and I couldn't shake the sensation that something was amiss. When he stepped closer, my unease intensified. His eyes held a strange quality, as though he wanted to express something but couldn't find the words. The air seemed to grow heavier, stifling my breath, and I felt as though the walls were closing in. My heart pounded as I tried to muster the courage to tell him to leave again, but the words caught in my throat. I felt immobilized, uncertain of what might happen next. Should I call for help? Should I get out of bed? My thoughts were a chaotic jumble. Before I could act, Peter suddenly sat on the edge of my bed. A chill ran down my spine as his presence became even more unsettling. Just then, Rufus appeared in the doorway. To my surprise, he didn't seem alarmed or angry to find Peter in my room. Instead, he entered with a calm demeanor, sitting on the other side of the bed as though this were entirely normal. His expression was unreadable, carrying an air of knowledge I wasn't privy to. My gaze darted between them, my pulse quickening as the oppressive silence thickened. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. "What's going on?" I whispered, my voice barely audible. Though I desperately wanted answers, I was also afraid of what they might reveal. The tension in the room was suffocating, and I felt like I was trapped in a nightmare. Neither Peter nor Rufus spoke immediately. They sat there, one on either side of me, as though waiting for something unspoken. Then, Rufus and Peter exchanged a glance that made my heart race even faster. My fear must be visible on my face, because Raquel's voice broke into a strangled hiss of bewilderment. It felt as though they shared a secret I wasn't meant to know. I felt entirely excluded, like a spectator, to a story I didn't understand. Finally, Rufus broke the silence. "I think we all know," he said quietly, his voice calm yet serious. This was a stark departure from the Rufus I knew, the one who loved to joke and bring levity to any situation. My heart pounded as I tried to grasp what was happening. Everything felt surreal, as though I were caught in a dream I couldn't escape. What was Peter doing in my room at this hour? Why was Rufus behaving so differently? A knot tightened in my stomach, and I wished I could flee the room and escape the unsettling emotions that enveloped me. Rufus exhaled deeply, visibly nervous. "You know," he began slowly, "we've always kept this a secret, but the truth is, my friends and I really admire you. We discussed it at length, and tonight they gave me the strength to finally share how we feel." I blinked in astonishment, unsure if I understood correctly. Did they truly admire me? My heart raced as I tried to grasp what he was saying. Was he really revealing that he and his friends liked me? A blend of bewilderment and excitement surged within me. Rufus gazed at me intently, his expression earnest, making it clear he meant every word. Hearing him say it aloud felt surreal. I wondered what this could mean for us and how things might unfold moving forward. Would everything between us shift? I wanted to ask so many questions, but my voice seemed lost before I could fully process what was happening. Both Rufus and Peter stepped closer, their faces serious, clearly intent on talking. Rufus locked eyes with me and said, "Whenever we see you, something strange happens. Our hearts start racing, and we feel an unexplainable connection to you." Peter nodded in agreement, adding, "It's difficult to describe, but when you're near, we feel this warmth spreading through us." It seemed like something thrilling was stirring inside them, and they wanted to know if I felt the same. I sat there, my mind whirling as I processed their words. They were confessing special feelings for me. My heart pounded even harder. I never imagined they could feel this way, and I questioned whether I felt the same kind of excitement. It was overwhelming, and I didn't know how to react. Then, to my astonishment, both Rufus and Peter began removing their clothes right before my eyes. I stared in disbelief, my mouth falling open. Who had given them the bravery to do this? Slowly, they took off their shirts and pants, leaving themselves entirely exposed. Standing before me, completely naked, they held serious expressions, as if this was entirely normal. "We have nothing to hide from you," Rufus said in a calm and steady tone. My heart raced, and my cheeks flushed with heat. I felt a mix of confusion and surprise. Why would they choose to reveal this to me? My mind swirled with unanswered questions, and it felt as though I was caught in a bizarre dream. The room was silent except for the sound of my breathing, which seemed unnaturally loud in my ears. I looked at them both, struggling to comprehend what was unfolding. Rufus had always been my stepson, and Peter was his close friend. I thought I understood who they were, but now everything felt altered. Are you serious? I finally managed to ask, my voice barely audible. They both nodded, their eyes locked on mine, as if they were waiting for a specific response or reaction from me. My heart thudded in my chest, and I felt utterly unsure of what to do next. Is this magnifying my own lack of imagination? Why can't they at least show me the situation? Why are you showing me this? It's not just about appearances, it's about what they meant by their feelings, he said. As I listened, I felt a swirl of emotions. Part of me wanted to tell them to get dressed, but another part was curious about what they meant by their feelings. I had never considered them in that way before. Rufus took a deep breath and said, "We thought you should know the truth. It's tough to keep secrets, especially when we care about someone." I could clearly see their bodies and noticed they were both very excited. It was surprising to see them like this, and I started to feel odd myself. I didn't understand why I was reacting this way, but my heart was pounding. I felt a mix of confusion and curiosity. Suddenly, Rufus and Peter exchanged quick looks. I could tell they were both nervous, but excited. "We planned this night so we could all enjoy ourselves together," Rufus said, his voice a bit unsteady. Peter gave a small smile, trying to comfort me. "We thought it would be a night to remember, something special." He spoke, but I wasn't certain if I was comfortable with the idea. They exchanged another look, sharing a secret I wasn't included in. The room felt charged, as if something significant was about to occur, and I wasn't sure if I was prepared. Rufus moved closer and sat down, his whole body visible. "Come on, don't act like you don't want this," he said. "Let's do this." His firm member touched me, and he said, "Come enjoy it." I felt it, smooth and warm. Before I realized it, he was gently pulling the blanket off me. As I watched, my body started to feel different, like a warm wave of relaxation washed over me. I didn't understand why, but I felt ready for something new and thrilling. It seemed like Rufus and his friend had planned everything perfectly, making it difficult for me to refuse. My heart was racing with curiosity, and a small voice in my head wondered what might happen next. I felt an odd combination of excitement and nervousness as I wondered what they wanted to share with me. The moment was filled with endless possibilities, and my mind began to wander. I took a deep breath, trying to steady my racing heart, eager to see where this surprising evening might take us. As the blanket slid off me, a wave of warmth spread through my body, and my heart started pounding. It felt like something significant was about to unfold. Then, out of nowhere, I felt a soft kiss on my lips. It was gentle and sweet, sending a flurry of butterflies swirling in my stomach. I had never experienced anything like it before. The kiss felt like stepping into a new world, full of curiosity and warmth. I could barely comprehend what was happening, my mind spinning with excitement. The moment felt enchanting, as if time had paused just for us. I realized this was a special connection, one that I would remember for a long time. That night, they didn't let me rest, urging me to stay awake and join them in a shared sleep. They insisted it would be fun for all of us to spend the night together. The air was charged with excitement. But after that initial kiss, I made a decision. I looked at them both and firmly told them I didn't want to take things any further. Despite the flutter of emotions and curiosity in my body, I stood by my boundaries. "The kiss was fine," I said, keeping my tone even, "but I can't go beyond that." They tried to change my mind, their words gentle and kind, but I stayed true to my feelings. I appreciated their kindness and attention, but remained steadfast in my decision. The atmosphere was heavy with a mix of tension and mutual understanding. I felt proud for honoring my own feelings. After some time, Rufus and Peter decided to leave the room. They had envisioned the night as exciting and enjoyable, but it was clear their plan hadn't gone as they'd hoped. The kiss was the only thing we shared. I could see the disappointment on their faces, which made me feel a bit sad. They seemed to have wanted more, but deep down, I knew I had made the right choice. As they rose to leave, I took a moment to collect my thoughts. I could tell they felt let down, but I was proud of myself for standing by my decision. Listening to my own feelings had been the most important thing. "I'm really sorry if you're disappointed," I said quietly, "but I just don't want to go further than that." They both nodded, acknowledging my feelings, even though they didn't seem to agree. Rufus gave me a reassuring smile, while Peter appeared thoughtful. "We understand," Rufus said. "We just wanted to have a nice time with you." I valued their honesty, but knew my choice reflected what felt right to me. That mattered more than making others happy. As they walked out of the room, I was overwhelmed by a mix of emotions: relief, sadness, and a glimmer of hope. Perhaps someday we could just be friends, enjoying each other's company without any pressure or expectations.